You just let me know when we have speed.
You have speed.
Okay, so here we are in the Classic Actors Studio, and you have interviewed Al Pacino for your installment of Inside the Actors Studio. So tell me a little bit about bringing it back and this classic interview.
Tell you about what do you mean by bringing him back?
In other words, bringing back Inside the Actors Studio and with this slightly different format than what we're used to with James.
Yeah. Well, this is the new version of Inside the Actors Studio, and Al had done it years ago. And in true Al fashion, wasn't particularly thrilled with the way he felt at the time. So he's a perfectionist, so he was a little reluctant to do it again. But then he was wonderful. When we did the interview, he was Al. He's a genius, and he's unpredictable and deep and profound and funny, and there's nobody like him. So I think we got a lot of interesting. Excuse me. Hold on 1 second. I think we got a lot of interesting stories and insights into him, and I was really thrilled with the whole event.
Now, the show has always followed a very particular format, but one of the benefits is you were also interviewed by James at a point in your career. How did that play into the way you interviewed Al?
Well, it's different because I'm an actor, so I have a different point of view to speak from. Jim was a very skilled interviewer, and he had many talents in many different areas. But Al and I have had the same training with the same teacher and almost the same number of years of career. And so I can appreciate him in a different way. And it affected the kind of questions I asked him.
So the format obviously also has the 10 questions.
Thank you.
The format also has the 10 questions at the end.
We didn't do the 10 questions. Somehow we just didn't get to it. It was a freewheeling kind of event. It had its own structure, so I never got to ask him his favorite swear words.
Or what he would do at the gates of heaven if there was
Right, yeah, that would have been good.
Now, I saw him last night, and I saw Marty last night, and obviously there's a connection with all of you. You're Oscar, Marty, Alice, the whole thing. Tell me about how it all comes full circle for you, in having this incredible career, and Marty still making great films at 76, and Al out there still being using this new technology to look younger. Tell me about how this all feels, what's going on today.
Well, I saw The Irishman, and I was just overwhelmed with the artistry. Marty's always been a great artist. He was when he directed Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, and it was only, I believe, his second picture. And he was a young, energetic director. And now he's a wise man. And that shows in his films. There's a different tone, there's a different depth. Even though he's still making a film about that world, the world of the mafia, the underworld, it still has a human profundity, I have to say. The moments in the film that Bobby De Niro's and Al's and all the actors. Joe Pesci is just brilliant in the film, totally different than we've ever seen it. Harvey Keitel is just in for a few minutes, and yet, I don't know, just seeing him in the film stirs up so many memories of his past appearances in Marty's films, there's a feeling of, I don't know, if you took a long, long study course that lasted your whole life, and this would be your final thesis. Not that I'm sure it's not Marty's last movie, but it was a kind of summation of all of the years of great artistry that he's given to us. And to see Al being just, his Jimmy Hoffa will go down in film history. It's so brilliant. So it's quite a marvelous experience to see the film. Let's shift gears a little bit to your career. Obviously, stage was a big part of it, and the types of roles that you chose along the way. I mean, one of my favorite films is Requiem for a Dream, and that is such an incredible performance. Thank you.
Tell me a little bit about where did that the idea that you could do so many different types of roles, what was the foundation of that?
This place, the Actors Studio, my study with Lee Strasberg. When I came to Lee, I was uneducated in every way, except what I had read myself, but I never went to college. I was a high school dropout. My first audition, I got a lead on Broadway. So I was working without ever knowing what I was doing, just whatever came out was what we got. And when I came here, actually to Lee's private classes before I became a member, it was like all that I had been manifesting in a helter-skelter way got centered. And I looked at acting in a different way, at work in a different way, and myself in a different way. So working out the studio and playing Lady Macbeth and whatever I wanted, whatever I felt would further my growth, I did here. And I began to feel a sense of the size of the thing I was working with. So I owe my career to the Actors Studio and Lee Strasberg.
So how does now make you feel as co-president? Were you artistic director?
Was I?
Artistic director of the
I was artistic director for years, several different years, several different stints.
How does that feel to this is the place you got your foundation, and now this is the place where you've taken on a leadership role?
It's my artistic home. You know, it's like growing up in a house and that other family members own, and then at a certain point it's, oh, now I'm the owner of the house, and then, oh, now I'm passing the house on to someone else. Oh, now it's come back to me. And, you know, there's a group of us, like Al and Estelle Parsons and Carol Kane and many others who have been here for years and years and years. And, you know, Paul Newman was at one time president, and we loved the place. And even though when Lee passed, it was an unbearable loss, we found that he was alive in us, and that we could, in fact, pass on his teaching to the best of our ability.
So you mentioned about how he helped shape you as a young person into the actor that you became. What if there was one thing you had to say that, or to express what he taught you that would allow you to be able to work with Neil Simon to Scorsese to Darren Aronofsky, all very different in their approaches. What would that thing be?
He taught me how to be real. I didn't even know what real was. I knew what cute was. I knew what charming was. I knew what talented was. But I didn't know what real was. And it's hard to describe, but he taught me my own inner integrity and what mattered, both in the work and in my life and in my attitude toward life. So it was more than just learning to act. It was learning to strive to be as good a human being as I can possibly be, and know when I'm being that and know when I'm faking.
Wow, that certainly answers it. That really answers it. Alec, obviously co-president, also one of the hosts for Inside the Actors Studio. Where do you see the similarities of the foundation of Alec Baldwin that you had with this place?
I don't know Alec as well as I know Al. He's been moderating the sessions sometimes, and he has a different approach. He has a different background. I'm about to get to know him better because I'm about to direct him in a film, and I'll be playing his mother and directing him. And that'll be an interesting experience because he's a pretty macho guy. So I look forward to asserting my directorial and motherly love for him.
What is the shifting gears between stage and screen, either when you're in front of the camera or in this case behind and in front? What for you? What is the differences, if any, in your motivation?
Well, first of all, the basic work is understanding psychologically who the characters are and what's really happening in the story, and finding the way to express that. Kazan said, who's one of our founders, that behavior is psychology made visible. And finding the behavior of a character is the process, what that behavior is expressing. And that's the same for stage or film. When you're working on the stage, you have much more time for that discovery. When you work in film, sometimes you're cast in a role and get on a plane and go to Toledo, Ohio, and jump in bed with somebody and say, "How do you do? I'm Ellen Burstyn. We're about to kiss each other." You know, it's a different approach. Sometimes you have a little rehearsal, but not very much. And the rehearsal process is what deepens the work. And so finding ways to get to those places on film without the rehearsal process is a real challenge. Not impossible, but...
Now, on occasion, you've done stage and then the film version, right? At the same time next year would be was there a difference there? How did one flow into the other? I'm curious how that happens.
Well, I first of all had a different lover. It was Charles Grodin on stage and Alan Alda on film, so that immediately made a difference. You can't do your stage performance on film. You know, the camera's up close and the audience is not in the balcony. So it kind of pulls it in. And yet it's a comedy, so there's an outward manifestation. It's tricky and impossible to explain. But there is a difference, and at the same time, there's certain similarities because the psychological work is the same.
Looking back at like this incredible career, I don't want to ask you what your favorites were, but what markers, what milestones do you like revere of from the start of your career till now? You know, I mean, obviously there are so many that I can think of, but I'm curious what you think.
Well, certainly Alice doesn't live here anymore. It's a big one. Working with Marty and being able to achieve what I wanted in a film in terms of who would direct it and who would be cast in it and how it would be done. The intention of the film, which was to tell a story from a woman's point of view, which Marty succeeded in doing. So that was a huge change. The Exorcist, of course. It's hard to, I mean, like the Last Picture show was a big change in my career. It's when I became known. And Requiem for a Dream, I think, is a profound experience. And then there's another film, Resurrection, which is very important to me. It was not a success in the marketplace, but it's a success as far as it lives on and it's meaningful to people still.
It's interesting, in Requiem, I love seeing that film numerous times, and I find it one of the most disturbing films that I've seen, especially with your character. How does that, like, does that leave you after you do the film, like what that character had to go through?
No, I know I'm asked that question a lot, and it's kind of odd. But after working in something like that, at the end of the day, what I always feel is exhilaration. Because when you are really being creative, it feels so good. You know, and you don't get a chance to all the time.
You came out at a time, I guess, when film was changing. I guess the rating system had been put in place. There was far more experimentation on screen and the types of storytelling. That's kind of like we're in another mode right now where things are changing. With say stuff like Me Too and Time's Up and things like that. Where do you see that taking the art and the way we tell stories and the way we depict, say, women on screen?
Well, I know when I did Alice that I said, I really want to tell this from a woman's point of view, and I don't think that's been done before, and it hadn't. And I think that was the first step. I had hoped that it would have more of a transformation within the industry than it did, but it took I shouldn't say a few years, it took a few decades for it to finally find its legs, so that there are women filmmakers who, and men, who really understand that there is a difference between how a woman sees the world and how a man sees the world. And that it just like it takes a woman and a man to make a baby. It takes both. Now, with the Me Too movement, which I think is a long time coming, I think there's been behavior by people in power that has long been tolerated that is now being called into question. You can edit this out if you want, but I will say it. A line like, when you're a star, you can do anything with them you want, is a definition of abuse of power. And we should not be surprised if somebody makes a statement like that in relation to a woman, that they manifested in other areas too. That's political and it doesn't have to be used, but I would like to say it. At the same time, I think we have to be careful to not swing the pendulum so far the other way that everybody's afraid to make a creative move. And I've seen that happen, where somebody is asking permission to touch someone in a scene. I think that's, we have to know what is really acceptable without going too far in restricting. And I think we're in that process now. I don't think we've come to the set of rules that will work for everyone, because that's not going to happen. It has to be a feeling that we have as humans for each other.
Yeah, because some of the films, I was a film student, and I can remember films that I saw that were 68, 69, and that movies like Three in the Attic and things like that.
Say what?
Like movies like Three in the Attic. I don't know.
I don't know that.
It was a 70s movie that I remember having to see it for a class. And they had very, the subject matter wouldn't fly today, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
And how in its misogyny and sexism. So yeah. I was just curious how you thought, like, the how that affects the art in the creative sense. Well,
I hope in a good way. That's what I say. We have to find the balance. But we go through the same thing with racism. There's been, for instance, when I was a child, I would go to the theater and see minstrel shows. And it never occurred to me that there was anything wrong with that. That was perfectly, it seemed normal. Now, I realize when I hear that, somebody's been caught with a photograph in blackface 40 years ago, that was a different time. The consciousness was different. Now it's absolutely, it would be horrendous if somebody did that. But then if you grew up in a world where that was normal, who would you have to be to go, no, we can't do that, We are a product of our time. And so now I'm sure we're going through a lot of things that we correct too far, and we have to pull it back, We're still working through racism in this country, obviously. It's coming to the surface in a way that it hasn't for years, because it's been suppressed. It wasn't politically correct. Now all of a sudden, it's rising into a level that I haven't seen since the 1950s. So, life isn't a straight line where you just make up the rules and this is good and this is bad. There's working it out. We have to work it out honestly and sincerely with each other.
So I guess my next question.
Sorry, just 1 second. So it's about 2 minutes to noon. So I just want to be mindful. Are you okay?
Thank you, dear.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I wanted to talk more about inspirations. You said that you came to the actors studio, you came to Mr. Strasberg, and he sort of guided you to become the actor that you are today. But what brought you to that point? What was the inspiration that made you want to do this for a living? Because obviously it had to come before that.
Yeah, it was a moment. I was doing a film, I can't think of the name of it. It was with Debbie Reynolds and Tony Curtis and Walter Matthau. I can't think of the name of it. It was, oh God, look it up. It was had been a Broadway play.
Let's see. Goodbye, Charlie?
Yeah, Goodbye, Charlie. All right, so I was doing a film called Goodbye, Charlie with Debbie Reynolds, Walter Matthau, and Tony Curtis. And I was sitting on the set, fully made up in a wig, and the wig actually had been worn by Shirley MacLaine in another movie, and the clothes were designed for, and my makeup was done by Debbie Reynolds' brother, and the clothes were designed by Edith Head. And I was sitting there, lighting was going on, and I thought, well, this is it. This is the big time. I'm co-starring in a movie with Debbie Reynolds. Next step, I'd be playing her part. And this voice in my head said, I don't want it. And I realized that my career was on a track going in a certain way, that something inside of me knew that wasn't the way I wanted to go. And I was in California. I packed up my house and my kid and my husband and moved back to New York, and I went to Lee Strasberg, who I had heard about. I knew he was the teacher of the actors I admired, like Marlon Brando and Jimmy Dean and Paul Newman, and you know, all the actors I admired had been students of Lee's. So I went back and started over. I hadn't studied till that time.
Wow. But as a little girl, what made you want to be an actor?
Oh, movies like the Dolly Sisters with Betty Grable and June Haber, and they wore sequin costumes and sang songs and had blonde hair and lots of makeup. And that's what I thought was being an actress, you know, what I was looking for. But then something else got in there, and it was those actors. And, you know, it was the people that came from this place that did work that I went, I don't know how to do that. I went, they know something I don't know. What is it? And I wanted to find out.
So as we wrap this up, just back to the interview with Al Pacino, what did you find most profound about this discussion that you have with Al for this edition of Inside the Actors Studio?
Oh, that story he told about Serpico, that just killed me. He said that he got to know Serpico and he went to visit him at his house in Montauk. And he said to Serpico, so you still don't take graft, huh? And Serpico said, no. And Al said, well, why don't you take it and give it away to people that need it? And Serpico answered, then who would I be when I listened to Beethoven?
That's pretty amazing.
Isn't that great?
So did you ever have to get him comfortable? Did you feel like at the beginning of the interview he wasn't as comfortable as it
Definitely.
got warmed up, and what warmed him up?
The people's reaction, and that he, after a while, trusted that I was going to ask him all right questions.
So was there a comfort zone at all, since you kind of, you know, you guys have a very similar background or trajectory?
Well, I adore him and respect him, and he knows that. And, you know, I think we're fellow travelers of a sort.
And then the film that you're directing, tell me a little bit about that with Alec Baldwin.
Well, I'm just going into pre-production now, so it's not something I can talk about yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it will be, we'll start shooting in November, and Alec plays my son, and that's all I know so far.
So I guess like when you're like having, like I keep saying, having this career, which we kind of know, what is it that makes, when you're acting still, what is it that you feel that's been the same since it all began? What is that feeling? What is that emotion when you're actually in front of a camera or in front of an audience that you're feeling?
One day when I was on stage in Same Time Next Year, in the middle of the performance, I suddenly became aware, well, there's all those people out there in the dark, sitting watching this little rectangle of light with two people on stage pretending to be other people. Why are they here? Oh, and it's not just happening in this theater, it's happening in other theaters in the whole Broadway area. Oh, and it's happening around the world. What is theater? I got curious. So I went to a drama bookstore and I got a book on the history of theater. And on the first page it said, the first time someone stood up around the campfire and told the story of the tribe to the tribe, theater was born. So films and TV and all of the other versions of theater, that's all theater. And I've learned how to tell the story of the tribe to the tribe, and that's what I'm still doing.
Can't think of a better way to end this.
Is there possibly just one more question
Sure.
about just the importance or why it's so great to be able to share the stories that these actors are sharing with
Yes.
television audience? Is that
Yeah, no, absolutely, anything, yeah. So let's talk about the importance of why it's important to share the stories of what Inside the Actor Studio does.
Share the stories of what Inside the Actor Studio does.
In these interviews and what you hope an audience gets from it.
Well, there is an art to acting, and people who study the art are doing a different kind of service than people who do what I was doing when I first started, was just getting up there and being able to say the lines so they made sense and move around, hit my marks, and do what comes naturally. There is an art to acting and studying art. I mean, it's like a concert pianist. The greatest concert pianists still have coaches and they study. And I think sometimes with the advent of television and the amount of work that's available now, people are getting hired, as I was hired when I first started, before they've gone into the art. And I want actors to know there is an art there, and it's a deep one. And it is a service to the community to be able to reflect the story back to people so that they can see, that's why that happened, or that's why a person responds that way. Oh, I get it. It's a deep story and it's deep work. And I encourage young actors to go into the depth of the work.
Love it. Thank you so much.
Thank
Real
you.
pleasure. Thank you.
Good questions.
Oh, thank you. Just got the microphone.
Yeah.
Can you use that?
Yeah. Yeah. It's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Probably.
Oh, I'll show something.
So, will you know who this guy is?
This is Strasbourg if you're on this one.
This I'm not gonna be, shooting the words.
It's Kazan, yeah.
This one's Kazan, yeah, this one's Kazan. And then this is Lee Strasbourg.
You want Cheryl Crawford?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, let's just get the three of them. As long as we get Kazan, and Lewis, or is Lewis on any of these, or? Yeah. Like this Kazan Strasbourg.
Alice?
Yeah, it works.
Hmm?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. That's good. As long as we got that, I think we're good. Let me just actually get a quick. Get myself this one right here. All right. So you work for Ovation's your client? Is that?
Yeah.
Or is is the show? What?
We do the show for, I pushed it, I don't remember the, we did the upfront this year, but.
Yeah. So what's the show about?
it's the train, it's based on the Korean series with the film, the train that is circling the Earth after the planet's gotten too cold to inhabit, so everybody that's living is living on the train.
Somebody asked me that. There's something coming up on that, right?
That's possible. I'm trying to think of, let's see, yeah, like, we're not in October yet. The Comic-Con, are you guys doing Comic-Con?
Yeah, maybe it's a
Comic-Con on
Comic-Con.
Friday. Was it Comic-Con in LA